Welcome to Handheld Gaming Reviews. Today we're going to have a look at the Anbernic RG35XXSP. Throughout the video, I'm just going to refer to this thing as the SP. This is the first retro emulation gaming handheld that I've owned, which I bought as a result of the Retro Game Core video, link in the description below. For the price, I thought, what the hell, if it's not as good as the other YouTube channels have reported, it's a price I can live with. In case it's not already obvious by my modest subscriber numbers, I've paid for this device as well as all of the other devices that I previously featured on this channel with my own money. So let's get into it. Buying the SP, I was incredibly impressed. First, the quality of the unit itself. For the price I paid, around 80 Australian dollars delivered from AliExpress, I was not expecting that much in terms of quality. I pictured cheap plastic, a loose hinge, and a screen that would be serviceable but nothing too impressive. Boy, was I wrong. It could be because my expectations were set so low and I've never owned one of these devices before, but I was really impressed with just how good the device feels in the hand. Dare I say it, almost premium. For some context, and anyone who is new to this models channel, I own a range of handhelds going back to the original Game Boy, Sony PSP, PS Vita, 3DS, Steam Deck OLED, ROG Ally, Lenovo Legion Go, and even an ANEO Air 2S. So while I have next to no experience with the quality of these newer retro handhelds, I do have experience with the more, and I quote, premium handhelds out there at the moment. So why did I, or why should you buy this thing? I've purchased and even reviewed in a roundabout way a number of gaming PC handhelds, but something never sat quite right with me when making those videos. And I think that it's while I'm fortunate enough to be able to drop well over $1,000 and in some cases closer to 2,000 Australian dollars on gaming handhelds that will likely be obsolete in 6 to 12 months, there are so many people out there who aren't. This device has such a low barrier to entry in terms of cost that even a kid saving their birthday, Christmas or pocket money could put together enough bones to buy one. I might be showing my age here, but when I was young, a lot of kids were walking around with Game Boys in their school bags. They were built robust enough to be thrown into bags, in and out of pockets, dropped on concrete paths and playgrounds, and tossed into the back of the car for family holidays. Try that with a $1,500 Lenovo Legion Go with the screen size that rivals the TV our family crammed around watching the Friday night movie as a kid. The SP brings me right back to those robust, throw it around, take it anywhere types of devices, and I think it's a great thing for the industry. Not to mention this thing packs in what is probably millions of dollars in old money worth of cartridges on an SD card smaller than a SIM card in my first phone. This thing feels like it could take a few hits and survive. I'm old enough to know better. I keep it in the Anbernic leather case that it came with. A case, mind you, that I spent something like 6 Australian dollars on AliExpress, and again, I was not expecting this thing to be the quality that it is. So to my topic sentence, why should anyone buy this thing? Well, it's a lot of fun, it doesn't break the bank, it packs a lot of games and feels robust enough to carry around without worrying about it. It also fits well in your pocket. I did spend an entire Saturday within my jeans pocket, running around, going to hardware stores, visiting my folks, driving. I actually forgot it was in my pocket until the end of the day. The out-of-the-box experience. If you're looking for something you can just pick up, not mess around with and use, out of the box with the included firmware, this thing works. In fact, if you're not interested in messing around with firmware or finding your own ROMs or playing with BIOS settings, you can totally do that with this device. Is it a better experience with custom firmware? You bet. But you don't have to worry about that if you just want to drop 80 bones, have this thing delivered to your place, unwrap it and start playing. Or for that matter, pick it up as a Christmas gift for someone else. For those interested in custom firmware, there are a few options out there. I've played with MuOS, which works great, and I found it a better experience than the included firmware. Not that there's anything overly wrong with the stock firmware, but there's just something about MuOS that feels better for me. Also, if you're a total novice and feel intimidated by the prospect of custom firmware, there are a lot of guides out there showing you how to upgrade it. Trust me, it's not as daunting as you might think, even if you're not that IT savvy. The best part, you can do all this on a separate SD card and just swap them out. So you don't have to worry about breaking anything. Just throw the original SD card back into the SP and it'll work just as it did out of the box, provided that you didn't wipe anything on the original card, that is. Button feel, this is really up to personal preference. They are very clicky as has been reported, but I don't mind it at all. It's not off-putting to me, and if no one had mentioned it, I probably wouldn't have noticed. Although I have heard the production units aren't as loud as the review units that were sent out. To be honest, my wife plays a Nintendo Switch next to me in bed and her button mashing isn't that much quieter. She does have aftermarket replacement buttons on that thing, mind you. Anyway, my point is the button feel is pretty good. It gives a real retro clicky vibe. The quality of the D-pad is good enough for me. I'm not really a competitive gamer, but for the money, I can't complain. The screen. You know what? The screen's pretty great. The 4:3 aspect ratio works really well for retro titles, and the screen quality is surprisingly good. It gets nice and dim as well as nice and bright. Not too much to say except that the quality of the screen isn't something you need to worry about. I haven't tested the SP's battery life from full to drain, but based on my use, I'd say the reported usage of 4 to 6 hours depending on the types of games you're playing is probably about right. The speaker is better than I expected. It's nothing to get too excited about, but it's certainly not a poor quality speaker. I've heard better, I've also heard a lot worse. For the types of games you'll be playing, it works fine. If you're anything anything like me, you'll be plugging in headphones half the time anyway. On that note, there is a 3.5mm headphone jack, so plug in some old school wired earphones for that super retro vibe. While we're on the topic of I/O, there's a micro HDMI output that I haven't tried, and apparently this thing supports Bluetooth controllers, which I also haven't tried. I have been thinking about buying an 8BitDo Bluetooth controller to test on these sorts of things, so if that's something you're interested in me actually doing, then leave a comment below. There are plenty of other videos out there at the moment that have tested controllers with this unit, so have a look out there if that's something that you think you might need. On the HDMI front, the last I checked there were some issues depending on the custom firmware you're using, so do your research before giving that a crack. Using the HDMI with the stock firmware reportedly works okay. Again, I haven't tested this myself. The unit also comes with 2 micro SD card slots, one for the OS and one that you can throw in an extra card with some extra ROMs on if you like. There are already a lot of reviews out there speaking to the device's performance, so I won't go into too much detail here. I should have had enough B-roll in the background showing some of the games for you to get a feel for it. This thing in my experience does play up to PS1 games quite comfortably. I haven't tried too many 64 games. I think it's safe to say some will work, some not so much. To be honest, if all you did was stick to Game Boy Advance and Super Nintendo games, or that's Famicom for my American friends, you've really got thousands of titles to choose from anyway. And I think Game Boy Advance is really where this thing shines. It feels like the old school SP and runs those games great. This is the first thing I've ever bought off AliExpress. I live in Australia, and to be honest, I wasn't sure if I'd be prone to some sort of scam or delayed delivery experience. Not only was the experience relatively smooth, but this thing was delivered well within the guaranteed 10 days. I think it was delivered in just over a week from memory, and a lot of that time was likely due to Australian customs sticking probes in this thing's SD holes to make sure I didn't owe more tax for importing unauthorised foreign air or some such nonsense. So if you live in Australia and you're a bit nervous about AliExpress, my experience was totally fine, although that is just my experience. So in conclusion, in a world filled with choice, if you go with the RG35XXSP, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this content, give that subscribe button a crack. You can feel good knowing you've helped me achieve my goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers. Some people aim to run a marathon. I'm too lazy to do that, but I've heard it's healthy to have some goals to strive towards. Maybe yours can be subscribing to this channel so you can walk away with your head held high, knowing that you've achieved at least one goal for the day. Have a great one, and I'll catch you in the next one.